Tens of thousands of Coloradans were told they had until today to justify their job to the world's richest man or lose that job. This is Elon Musk's continuing dismantlement of the federal government with the backing of President Trump. But while President Trump said today he thought this government-wide demand of every single employee was great, Coloradans heard from their individual employment agencies in the government. NBC News says some of those agencies warned their employees not to respond to Elon Musk's emailed request. One warned that any reply might be read by malign foreign actors. Our Mark Salinger talked to a Coloradan who's just trying to do her job.
A lot of federal employees are very upset about this and very stressed out.
For a Denver woman who's worked for the IRS for years, speaking out about her experience as a federal employee right now is a must. But she wanted to remain anonymous out of fear she'll lose her job.
You know, Elon Musk, who is this man? Why are we justifying our positions to him?
This Denver-based IRS employee, who we agreed not to name, got the email from Musk asking her to share 5 things she did last week if she wanted to keep her job. NBC News reports Musk's team will now use AI to determine whether the jobs should be eliminated.
This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy.
She says the union she's a part of told her she should submit a reply to the email.
The managers know what we do. They keep tabs on what we do. We shouldn't have to justify that.
Last week, the Trump administration began laying off IRS employees here in Denver, right in the middle of tax season.
This is not a buyout. They fired these people for no reason whatsoever.
This week, the uncertainty for federal workers continued.
A lot of people are really mad about this.
After declining the offer for a deferred resignation, this government employee and thousands of others in Colorado are left justifying their jobs through 5 bullet points and an email.
Because I want the public to know that we are hardworking employees. You know, we don't fool around.
We wish you could tell you where this goes from here, but honestly, we don't know. Individual agencies within the Trump administration have told their employees not to respond to the email from Musk. It's a constant back and forth filled with confusion. Even more confusing, of course, and scary for the federal workers worried that if they don't respond, they'll be fired, Kyle.
I feel like, Mark, most everybody in their lifetime is going to work for somebody who is nuttier than squirrel excrement. But in this case, we know that they are at least unpredictable, right? Like 1 hour it's one thing, 1 hour it's another thing. Within the last hour, listen, Elon Musk tweets, subject to the discretion of the president, they, the federal workers, will be given another chance. Failure to respond a second time will result in termination. So again, we have like a termination notice for folks.
And you just have to put yourself in the mind of these federal workers. I mean, a tweet can be sent off in, 10 seconds?
Yep.
But these are people who their entire livelihoods, their income is built upon these jobs that they have. And now they're, holding at whether or not a tweet actually is real or not, or what to make of it.
Based on our feedback, there's some portion of the population that finds this to be amusing, right? That thinks that it's funny. I wonder, though, if there isn't a growing portion of the population that just thinks that it's kind of cruel to these people, right? Because the people that you've talked to, like, they aren't super ideological, right? Like, they're just kind of like working.
They're just trying to do their job. I mean, these people have worked at the IRS, the ones that I talked to, for years and years, and they never thought that they'd be let go like that.
Yeah. Mark Salinger, thank you. So the Trump administration and Denver public schools are currently in a legal battle over whether immigration raids can happen on school properties or near them. Homeland Security says it has not yet made arrests in schools, but they shouldn't be blocked from doing that. Last week, Denver Public Schools filed a federal lawsuit trying to get a temporary restraining order stopping ICE agents from making arrests at so-called sensitive locations, like schools and churches. DPS says fear of raids at or near schools is causing a large number of students to stay home. Late last week, Homeland Security filed their response. They argued that ICE raids haven't yet happened on school campuses, but that prohibiting raids at or near schools would be too restrictive, especially in the heart of cities like Denver. The Trump administration is also saying that the federal courts do not have authority to hear this case, although federal courts have already weighed in on the new policy. Today, a court in Maryland temporarily blocked immigration enforcement inside or near some places of worship. So believe it or not, the federal government is supposed to do more than just cause chaos in people's lives. Ideally, the government might even help some people dealing with chaotic situations through no fault of their own. Take victims of scams who are hoping to get the government's attention as Congress works on a new tax bill. Because as our Steve Steger explains, once the scammer gets their take, in comes Uncle Sam.
It's like a cycle that you can't get out of.
Debbie Fox calls it triage trauma. The few months when she was in hiding, ashamed of sending $58,000 to a man named Russell, a man who'd talked to her nonstop for weeks via phone and video chat, then convinced her he was in trouble and needed the money. Debbie was skeptical, but Russell always had the answers.
When I did a withdrawal from my 401k, I knew that there was a tax consequence, and I told him about this, and then he accounted for that in the loan agreement.
The loan agreement, much like Russell, turned out to be bogus. And in those months when Debbie was already ashamed about what happened, the hits kept coming.
It's like one hit after the next after the next. I would just remember being in that tax appointment, and I could not get out of there fast enough to just sob in my car, because here I was having another tax obligation to both the federal and the state.
She paid her scammer $58,000 and the tax man $7,000.
It's heartbreaking.
Bill Sweeney with AARP says what happened to Debbie is happening to scam victims across the country because of a change in law.
If they take the money out of a 401k or a retirement account, the IRS shows up and says, this was income, and you now have to pay taxes on this income that you have given to this criminal. This didn't used to be the law. In 2017, there was an ability to deduct these sorts of things, fraud, theft, or disasters. In the 2017 tax law, they tightened that tax credit up so that it could only be used for natural disasters.
Sweeney says the problem is only escalating with scammers getting more and more sophisticated and convincing.
These criminals do this all day long. They spend all day, every day, figuring out ways to target people, to use psychology, to use artificial intelligence and technology to find exactly the right buttons to press.
The AARP and scam victims like Debbie are pushing Congress to change the law.
This is not the way the government should be funding itself, on the backs of people who have just been a victim of a terrible crime and have lost their entire life savings.
To have your own government then tax you, have that more tax obligation, is just layering it on.
So there have been attempts to change this in Congress, but they've gone nowhere. The AARP hopes that the added pressure of the now sunsetting tax law will get something done for crime victims. They estimate it would cost the government about $100 million in tax revenue, which is really kind of a drop in the bucket when you consider all the money that is lost to fraud these days, Kyle.
Steve, you're talking about the idea of scams getting more sophisticated. I think there might be a misconception that a lot of people are just getting taken because they don't do any research. They don't look into these things.
You know, doing this job for about a year now and talking to so many people who have been through this, you realize that these scammers, it's their full-time job. And a lot of them just spend hours and days doing research on people so that they're more sophisticated in those scams. You add in AI now, you add in all the information that's about you on the internet, it's really, really tough.
All right, Steve Steger, thank you very much. There are menaces on Denver sidewalks. They fly by you in a lime green blur as the rider shouts a boozy woohoo. It's those scooters. City councilors say Denverites are riding electric scooters like crazy, more than 23 million trips since 2018. And people keep falling off those things and getting acquainted with the pavement. Denver Health reported nearly 2,000 scooter-related incidents last year. And it's not just the drunk young bros on the way home from the bar. Guess this for me now. City Council says the average age of a person injured on a scooter in Denver is, average age? No way you guessed 34. 34 years old? Friends, make better choices. 34. You might even have a family. City Council is considering new rules for scooters, working with vendors to introduce technology to track and slow down the scooters that illegally ride on the sidewalks, or required parking zones to cut down on the scooters that just litter the sidewalks, tipped over on their side like somebody got raptured off the top of it. But then the question is how to enforce those rules.
One of the biggest job openings that we have are right-of-way enforcement ticketers. And they're who I believe actually enforce these scooters. So we can't even enforce our 2-hour, 3-hour parking standards in the city. Who enforces these laws?
DPD would be is in charge of moving violations, and then right-of-way enforcement can and does support with misparked scooters.
I just asked Steve Steger over there if he's ever ridden a scooter, and he reminded me he rode one in this studio one time on this show. I don't think the boss liked that. We only did it the once. All those violations would likely be punishable by fines, either to the individual riders, the woo-hoo crew, or in mass fines to the scooter vendors. Well, I have to thank you for your support for your latest Word of Thanks microgiving project. Last week, you were raising funds for Florence Crittenden, Denver's longtime school for teen moms, the place that has childcare right on campus for their babies, a medical clinic as well right there for them, and one-on-one case management for years to help both generations succeed. Your generosity raised more than $40,000 to support their work through one-time donations and then your monthly recurring gifts to the Word of Thanks Fund, where you give once a month and we split it up among all the nonprofits we feature. Your microgiving has brought in well more than $14 million for nonprofits in every corner of our state. That is no small thing. If you know of a wonderful organization anywhere in Colorado that could use our help together, email me, next@9news.com, or text next, 303-871-1491. So there are Coloradans who are trying to make all 71 miles of the Highline Canal more enjoyable, even areas of the trail long overlooked. And the Denver Police Department honors a black officer who broke the mold and helped other officers do the same.
Tell them, hey, don't give up, don't quit, keep your head up, and continue to do your job wherever you may end up at.
A look back at his trailblazing career next. The only psychiatric hospital in western Colorado is going to close in a few weeks. The board says West Springs Hospital in Grand Junction is in rough financial shape after years of issues. West Springs offers inpatient and emergency psychiatric services for the 10 counties of northwest Colorado. Today, West Springs board announced the hospital will close March 10th. Some outpatient and detox services will continue to operate on that campus. We've previously reported on a number of problems at the hospital. Top leaders resigned in 2022. There was an investigation that found the hospital failed to properly account for state and federal tax dollars. Then last year, the hospital announced that it was near closure due to the cost of ongoing audits, rising healthcare expenses, and just the number of empty beds there. This month, the hospital board rejected a contract that would have had them take in and treat ICE detainees, people held by immigration. It's a proposal the CEO said could have brought in millions of dollars. So what happens now? Board says they're considering how to best use the building to, quote, meet vital healthcare needs.
An early preview of spring today with temperatures close to 70. This coming off a string of very cold and snowy days and weeks in Colorado. We're still dealing with wind along the foothills tonight, but no advisories for wind as of yet. 67 degrees our high today, 70s in southern Colorado. Average high is 48 and the record today was 71. Still very mild out there at 54 for Denver, 60 in Pueblo this hour. But the wind's been picking up and we've seen some very gusty conditions up around Bailey and Blackhawk, down to Virginia Dale, Georgetown, and northwest Boulder. Seeing a break from some of the higher gusts in the foothills tonight, but we do expect that wind will return tomorrow in advance of a weather system that's going to bring a little bit of light snow for those of you headed into the high country tomorrow and tomorrow night. Again, not enough accumulation that we have any advisories for snow or travel. So another warm day tomorrow at 67, cooler but dry Wednesday, a string of 60-degree days that take us into the first full weekend of March.
A conservation group is closer to turning a failed irrigation project into an immersive trail that connects neighborhoods from Douglas County up to north of Green Valley Ranch in Denver. The 71-mile Highline Canal was built in the 1800s. It was meant to bring irrigation water to farmers and ranchers on the plains, but the thing was a bust. Too much water leaked out and evaporated. The northeastern portion of the canal hasn't carried water for decades, so the focus has been shifted to creating a trail there. Highline Canal Conservancy has raised $100 million for improvements. Majority of the money's gone to the northern 28 miles of the trail, where it needs the most work and also where it happens to run through lower income communities.
Areas of the canal have not been as populated by people using it. And so there's been a historic underinvestment in these areas, and we're trying to really focus this funding to make improvements that are community driven.
Recently approved grant from the Conservancy to the City of Denver allocates $2.7 million to improve the trail in the Windsor and Green Valley Ranch neighborhoods of Denver. The Conservancy has grants with other local governments to get work done here and there, and they expect projects to be complete by early next year. Honoring a law enforcement trailblazer whose decades-long career took him to the mayor's office and the Denver Nuggets. That's next. It's Monday, it's not hump day, don't be confused. Black history is not just museum stuff, you know. It often is playing out around us in the life stories of Coloradans who blazed trails for others. Like a 34-year law enforcement veteran who rose through the ranks, racking up first, preparing the way for others. Our Byron Reed has this story.
Part of having a successful career starts with support from family.
It's good to have a strong lady and a strong family behind you.
For retired police officer Bobby Simmons, it was a job that took some understanding from his wife, Karen.
There was a lot of long hours, and she knew this when we got married, that I would be gone.
Simmons joined Denver Police in 1971 after hearing about the department's goal of recruiting more people of color.
They was advertising for young officers, minority officers to join the police department.
During his 34-year career, he served in several roles from patrolman to the Vice Narcotics Unit and the Front Range Task Force. In 1984, he was the first black officer selected to join the mayor's security detail and was instrumental in mentoring other black officers.
Tell them, hey, don't give up, don't quit, keep your head up, and continue to do your job.
He now joins a legacy of black officers who served in DPD before him.
It's a great honor to be in the company of the other trailblazers ahead of me who's sort of paved the way that I've really admired, and happy to be a part of that.
Our friend, Mr. Bobby Simmons.
Recently, Simmons was presented this year's African American Trailblazer Award from the Denver Police Museum. This award recognizes black officers who were the first to achieve a milestone in their careers and opened the door for others following in his footsteps.
He was an extraordinary policeman, superior intellect, appropriate demeanor, solid physical skills, a great sense of humor, and a kind heart. All those talents in a person who happened to be African American.
It's an honor his family is proud of.
Dad, we are so proud of you, and we are grateful for you, and today we celebrate you.
The day was a celebration about serving his community that Bobby Simmons is happy to share with the people he loves most.
When you know that your family is supportive and they are happy and standing behind you, it's a great feeling.
For Next.
Thank you very much.
I'm Byron Reed.
In 2005, Simmons retired from DPD and was selected to lead the traveling security team for the Denver Nuggets. That work took him across the U.S. and to Europe and Australia. I bet you anything, Marilyn, we have scooter feedback tonight.
We do.
We do have scooter feedback. Scooter feedback coming your way next. Your feedback tonight on Denver's menace, the scooters. David says, my son and I, 58 years old, rode 3 miles to our car on one scooter after a Broncos game. It was so fun, and we didn't fall. David, the Lord was with you that day. And also, you and your son are the reason why the average age of a scooter fall victim in Denver is 34 years old. They're meant for young people. DJ says, since it's illegal to ride them on the sidewalk, why can't police use loudspeakers to tell the riders to get off? Let's go, bro! Off the sidewalk, baby!